So this is Max, and we're talking with Craig Kelly down in Georgia about the elections, the midterm elections coming up.
Not only that, Max, and thanks for having me, we're talking specifically about voting, not the actual elections, which are important, but the process of voting, the importance of counting votes, the integrity of the voting system, that sort of thing. That's why I'm down here. I hope for a particular result, but I'm down here to help make sure the voting process itself is honored like it should be.
And so, can you explain the process for the viewers?
Sure, people come and every state's different in some way, but people in Georgia come into a voting booth or voting polling place, and there are lots of them throughout Georgia. Before the election for advanced voting, they have many centralized places in each county where anyone from the county can vote before the election. On election day, they'll probably have 12 times as many places, precincts in each county, and then only people that live in that precinct can actually vote there. It's not county-wide anymore. So you come in, you present your government ID to show that you're who you are. They look you up on their register of people that can vote. If you can vote, they give you a little thing that you stick into an electronic machine, and you make your choices, and then it prints out a receipt. You put that receipt into a ballot scanning device, and it scans the ballot and it counts it. If they can't find you on the machine, you may cast a provisional, which they'll then check to make sure that you are properly registered. Or maybe you go home and you get the proper ID or whatever it might be. Or maybe a lot of times it turns out someone doesn't live in that county, so you go to the county where you live and cast your vote. It's actually fairly straightforward once you get it. It's not the same as it's always been, but it's not particularly convoluted once you've gotten this far.
So, are the races for state senators or state
I don't
and federal, or just federal,
I
or
think, well, so governor is one, right? Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp. And then the Congress, both Senate and House of Representatives at the federal level. There's some ballot questions. I don't know how much is particular to the county. Just like in Cambridge, we have sometimes specific city questions that are on our ballot. And I don't know if there's state representatives on the ballot or not. I don't know if this is that season. Probably, I would guess, but I don't know.
so this is primary a federal race.
This is primarily a federal race. I think a lot of people are looking at the Kemp uh, Abrams campaigns as a bellwether of where Georgia goes politically.
So I'm sorry. So I misspoke. So it's primarily a state race for governor, not for the state senators or
There
congressmen.
may be state senators and state representatives that are on the ballot. I wouldn't recognize the names. I recognize the names Kemp and Abrams. So they're definitely on the ballot. And then there are other people on the ballot too, because I see other signs out there, but I don't know who they are. I assume they're state.
So the Georgia manages who can vote for the governor. So you're saying that basically the state has a system where you register to vote in Georgia as a resident of Georgia, and then you go to any polling place, they'll pull you up in the
No,
system, then
no,
you
no,
can
no,
vote
no,
for
no,
whichever
no,
governor.
no. That's not what I'm saying. It's county.
Okay.
Georgia has a system of voting. They've got a Secretary of State that's involved in creating these rules for voting, but the voting's done at the county level, just like in Cambridge it's done at the city level. Here it's done at the county level. They have a county board of election people. So the county manages the election list, may have specific rules for this and that, as long as it doesn't conflict with state law.
So what's to stop a person from registering in multiple counties?
Well, I guess in theory you could do that, but then you'd probably get caught. I don't know exactly the ins and outs of how that would happen. And it's a huge fine to do that. It's like a penalty, I think, of 10 years in prison. It's a big deal. Sort of, it's fraud. Just like, what's to keep a person from breaking into your house and stealing all of your stuff? Sure, in theory, it can happen. Every once in a while, it does happen. But the penalties of doing it are huge, and the benefits are very small. So it's just, statistically, it's not a thing. It has no impact on the election whatsoever. Sometimes people make good faith mistakes. They think that they're registered in Cobb County, but it turns out that, the registration wasn't signed or whatever. So they're still registered in DeKalb County, but and then they go to vote in Cobb, and then if the Cobb people can't find them on the registration form, the person can cast a provisional. It says, hey, listen, I think I can vote here. And then there's a whole process to ascertain whether that person is in fact registered in Cobb County or not. And if they're not, the vote gets tossed out, and if they are, the vote gets counted. But
So what do you need to qualify as a to register as a voter? What proof of your identity must you have?
you've got to put in some sort of government license or some sort of ID of some sort, and a proof of residency. So I have a Georgia driver's license. I don't have to change it every time I move. So if I live in DeKalb County and then move to Cobb County, I don't have to then change my driver's license. So
But what if you don't have a driver's license?
I can use a Georgia government ID card. I can use a military ID card. I can use all sorts of things.
But I mean, do you have to have a government ID card?
No, you don't have to have. It turns out everyone does that I've seen. You don't have to have a government ID card. There is a provision for people that don't have them. It's a little laborious, and there aren't very many people that fall into that category. But if you're someone, for example, whose religious beliefs keep you from getting photographed, you may not have that sort of ID card, and that shouldn't take away your franchise. So there's a special procedure that you can provide information to prove that you are who you are, and then you get to vote. And those votes may also be put aside separately to make sure later on before they get counted. And they're not put just as the vote. They're put in this whole sleeve of information so no one knows how you voted. They just know this is who you said you are and why. And that can get double checked later on.
So in theory, it's possible if you didn't have any of these, excuse me, you didn't have any of these IDs, you could just go in and say you live in one house and get a phony bill sent there in one county, in another county. You could register in multiple counties.
In theory, someone could be stealing everything from your bedroom right now. I mean, there's lots of stuff that's possible in theory, and it doesn't happen in any meaningful way. In fact, it'd be very difficult for someone to do it, and very likely they would get caught. Now, don't ask me about how the likely part is, but there's a lot of effort. There's a lot of effort that goes into reviewing the voters list. The Republicans have tried to purge many, many, many people from the voters list. So these aren't lists that people put on a shelf and forget about. These are lists that people are constantly paying attention to. There's been none, zilch, evidence that voter fraud has in any meaningful way impacted elections in the past. That's just a myth. It's a lie that people like Trump make up to fuel suspicion and to cover the fact that they're losers.
Right, but what I'm getting at is, to me, it sounds like if somebody wanted to register in multiple counties, they could do it. And I don't believe it sounds like they could get caught because...
Okay, well, you and I don't know. You can believe what you want. I can
Right.
believe what I'm not I'm not an expert on that, Max. I don't know exactly what it is that they do to catch people, but I do know, and then they have a big list on the wall of the voting place. Here's what happens to you if you screw with elections, and the penalties are harsh. It's not something someone wakes up and says, I'm like some people take the bar in every state. That's what they do. It's kind of fun. No one's waking up and saying, I'm going to vote in every county in Georgia this election. It is a hugely, hugely impactful thing if you get caught.
Right, but I'm not saying that, there are individual voters that want to vote in multiple counties, but, I mean, the history of voting is that politicians would go to a bar and buy a bunch of people to go vote,
Sure, but that
multiple times or in one way or...
and there are lots of histories that are instructive but not dispositive about where we are now. So, is there ability to make things what they aren't? Not nearly what it used to be. You've got to do so many fraudulent things that individually will get you in jail and cost you thousands of dollars in fines if you're convicted. It doesn't happen, Max.
But I don't see how they wouldn't. You couldn't get away with it. I mean, if I'm in Georgia, I mean, I'm not photographed at the voting booth. Like, how would they prove that I voted in 2 counties? Let's just say I went, and for whatever
Or
reason.
you present your ID card.
Right.
And it's
What do you mean ID card? I don't have an ID card.
then you go through a whole set, and there is one where you photograph. Then you go through a whole set of validating procedures. Validation
Right.
procedures to keep people from doing exactly what you're talking about. It's not like people could just walk in here and say, "I'm Fred from wherever. I want to vote."
You're being very defensive. I'm just
And
asking
I think you're
some
asking
basic,
stupid stuff. I think you're finding
But-
some irrelevant thing to go down a rabbit hole on. I think that's stupid and a waste of both of our time.
But don't you understand? This is what gets, quote, Republicans so mad, because people ask them basic questions, and you're basically accusing them of asking stupid
It's just,
questions.
Max,
I mean,
there are such things
there-
as stupid questions. Are you saying it is
No,
possible
no, there
for
aren't.
someone to cheat? Yes, Max, absolutely.
Yes.
In theory, it
Right.
is possible for someone to cheat.
Right.
Is it likely? Absolutely. It's very difficult to succeed on that. You make it sound like people can, by your question, that you're worried about people waltzing in and just voting where they don't live. And that's not a thing. It's just not a thing. I don't even
I'm not
understand
worried
the
about it.
reality where you're coming from to ask that sort of question.
I'm not worried about it. I'm not making a claim that they're doing it. I'm only asking some just questions.
And I think I explained to you, it's not
knowing nothing
it's
about
not
it.
easy to do. It's possible, but it's
No,
not
you're-
easy to
you're-
do.
But you're yelling about.
Well, that's because I've
a-
said it 25 times. You're not taking
Right, but
my
you- but you're-
answer.
but
I have
you're not- but
explained to
you're
you
not-
why it is difficult, and you keep asking the same
No, you
stupid
haven't.
question.
No, you
I
haven't.
did. I said
No, you
I said
haven't.
you have to show an ID. If you're the one.
What ID?
if-
They don't have an
if
ID.
you're the
You
one
keep
person,
saying an ID.
Max,
They don't have an
if
ID.
you are the one person that I have not seen, and I've seen thousands of voters, if
Right.
you're the one person that comes in out of however many thousands of voters says, listen, I don't have an ID. My religion prohibits me from getting photographed. You still have to
Right.
present some proof of identification that you are who you say you are, and you still have to be a registered voter. And don't ask me the details exactly of what that proof is, but it's proof. It's possibly some sort of citizen, maybe a birth certificate. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's not something that you get a note from your friend on a sticky pad and say, oh, this is Fred, he can vote. It's way more challenging than that. And you make it sound like it's easy in your question. Well, why can't people just do it? People can't just do it because there are rules in place and procedures that the voting workers, the poll workers, are following to precisely keep that from happening, what you're worrying about. It's the defenses are
I'm not saying
there.
It's easy. No, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying that from what I understand about the process right now, it's easy. And then when I question why that's not true, you don't say these are the specific
Well,
things
Max,
that
I
they
told
do
you at
so
the
they can-
start,
Well,
I am
hold
not an
on.
expert on voting
Hold on.
law. You're asking me for some very specific stuff.
But you're a poll watcher.
I am a poll.
How could you?
I'm a poll watcher.
Right, so how could you not know this stuff?
Because it's super complicated. If someone were to do that, I would ask them for their information. They don't have to give it to me by no means. And I would pass that on to people who know more than I do. I'm not an expert on Georgia polls. There's people that spend their entire professional lives doing this stuff. I am at the
But what-
very ground level passing information on to people who know more than I do. If you want to, you go spend 15 minutes on the internet. You'd find your answer to that. Don't expect me to
I
have
would?
that. I would bet. Google, how difficult is it to vote if you don't have an ID in Georgia? And then you'll see something that says you don't have to have a photographic ID, but you do have to have something that shows that you're who you are. And this is the procedure we have for making sure you are in fact who you are. And you might as well ask about people with fake driver's license, Max.
But you're getting upset about stuff I'm not talking about.
I'm getting upset and
only
you're asking stupid questions.
There you go again.
What? Describing
You're
a
calling
stupid
me
question as
stupid.
a stupid question?
What's a stupid? Why is it a stupid
Because
question?
I've answered it 4 times to include.
No, you haven't.
To
You
include
haven't
saying
even answered it
to
once.
include saying, Max, I don't have the expertise to give you the detail that you want me to have, and you keep asking the question. So this is a waste of our time right now. I cannot give you the specifications that you want about what exactly the procedures are to keep someone from voting improperly if they don't have a picture ID. I know there are procedures. I know they are in that building behind me. I don't know exactly what they are. You can look them up and then you can find out.
No.
And I have not seen
you-
one person vote that way.
You're answering questions that have not been asked.
What's your question, Max?
So
Ask a question.
my question is, what is the procedure to catch people that vote in multiple counties without ID?
And
So
and I
if you
think
can
I
find that out
think
for
I told
tomorrow-
I'm not going to, Max. You can look it up on the internet. That's not something that I've seen going on. and the internet, Georgia's Secretary of State's going to be way better at explaining that factually than I am. I'm not claiming expertise in that, Max. So you're asking me a question, and I told you many times I don't have that expertise. I'm not here to give legal advice and to give election legal advice. I'm a poll
It's
watcher.
not
I
about
want to
legal
make.
advice. But why are you watching the polls?
I'm watching the polls to see that everyone who is able to vote, to help. It's not my job to actually make it happen, but to help ensure that everyone who is able to vote votes, and that every vote that is cast is counted. So if someone has a challenge voting, I can ask them, did you have a challenge vote? And they can say, oh, no, I'm only 17. I can't vote. Or they can say, yeah, I'm not on the registry. I just moved here a week ago. Well, it turns out that the registration period ended on the 11th. So I could say something like, well, you can still vote absentee where you're from. That's what I do. Or I can say, I don't know the answer to this one, but here's a phone number you can call up and ask these people.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it here for now.
Well, come up with non-stupid questions.
There you go again.
I'm not calling you stupid, Max. That was a stupid question. I mean, it wasn't
It's not-
initially it wasn't a stupid question, but you kept asking the same thing, and I don't know, Max. I just know what I've seen. There are lots of procedures in place to keep someone from waltzing in. Could it happen? Absolutely. In theory, conceivably, maybe it could happen. And you sound very Republican, by the way, picking some incredibly unlikely thing as a way to undermine a very solid foundation. The rules.
No, I'm not. I'm not Republican. I'm
I didn't say.
independent. I'm
I did not
curious
say
about
you
the
were
system.
Republican. I said you sounded Republican because that is what exactly these people are going to do. They're going to find some irrelevant, incredibly improbable, stunningly illogical hypothetical, and they're going to wrap people up on it, just like dead people voting. That doesn't happen at all in any way that impacts elections.
That was my next question.
And the way.
What are you doing to stop dead people from voting?
What am I doing? I'm doing the exact same thing to stop dead people from voting that I'm doing to stop Martians from voting, Max.
Okay, hold on. All right, I'm gonna leave it here. I'm gonna. Thanks for this interview. We'll pick this up tomorrow.
All right, did it work?